Hello and welcome to this exclusive broadcast. You're watching DD India with me, Deepika. And in this exclusive edition of International Film Festival of India, the 55th edition, we have with us a very, very special guest, the one, the legend, who's being honored with the Satyajit Ray Lifetime Achievement Award at the 55th edition. We have with us Mr. Phillip Noyce from Australia. So thank you so much for joining us in this exclusive broadcast, and many, many congratulations to you for this prestigious award.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So when we talk about, first of all, the award and your experience here in India, what do you have to say about it? Because you've been sharing a lot of stories about Satyajit Ray and what kind of inspiration you drew from the legend.
Right. Well, of course, we in Australia were very influenced by his films, particularly the Apu trilogy. Even though it was made before I was an adult, I was still a boy when in the 50s when he made the Pather Panchali. But you know, he was legendary in Australia because we grew up on big American films. Extravagances, and Satyajit Ray taught us to look for the heart, to make stories from the heart, to be small in scope but big in heart. And you know, he taught us so many other things as well. You know, and in a funny way, he himself had been taught by Vittorio De Sica, the famous Italian filmmaker, who made a film in the early 50s, just before Pather Panchali came out, or before Ray started filming it, and that was called Bicycle Thieves, which was a simple story of a kid growing up in post-war Italy, with real people playing the parts, not trained actors. And then Ray took that inspiration and turned it into the Apu trilogy. And then we in Australia saw Ray's films and said, okay, this is how we can make films. This is how we can make the smaller budget films that we can afford to make here in Australia. So, you know, there was a direct line from Italy to Satyajit Ray to us, first round of Australian filmmakers. Remembering that in Australia, from the beginning of the Second World War until about the late 60s, we didn't have a film industry. So, you know, we dreamed of making feature films. And the feature films that we wanted to make were so inspired by Ray's work.
And when we talk about the kind of budget, since you also talked about the budget, that he made such movies which were low cost but had a high impact in the film industry. And budget has been one important aspect not only for Indian cinema but for global cinema. What is your take on that, and how Australia has seen the subject taking inspiration from Satyajit Ray's film?
Well, you know, at the moment the film industry all over the world is in a little bit of chaos, particularly in America, but I suspect in every country. During the pandemic, the streamers like Netflix and Amazon and so on, they ramped up their production because everyone was staying at home and watching movies. And then once the pandemic passed, they cut back on production. And then in America, we were also greeted with a combination of a writer's strike and an actor's strike. So no one was working for about 9 months. And out of that strike situation, what emerged was a greatly reduced investment in films. I mean, in America, production is down about 50%. There's massive unemployment in the film industry. So we're all searching around for a way out of this. And of course, Satyajit Ray gives us the way out, which is to think smaller, to make films from the heart, to make not films that are elaborate in the emotions that they capture, but not necessarily, you know, the biggest film you've ever seen. That's one way. Another way of bridging the gap between financing and what's available to us is technology. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about technology and the evils of AI and how AI is going to rob writers and rob actors. as a director, I would say, thank goodness for AI, because that's the way in which we can also, make big films for small budgets by using technology. And let me also say that right now, all around the world, there are smart actors, the great celebrated actors, who are committing their image and their sound to be scanned and saved so that they can go on for hundreds of years at their present age in movies that haven't even been thought of, through using AI. So while there's complaints from actors about how AI could infringe on their rights, there's also many actors who are at the moment preparing for the future.
But is it a good practice? What is your take on AI and technology controlling the cinema industry, or cinema industry controlling the technology?
As a director, I'm interested in, as I said, in cutting the costs of making movies down, because that's what we have to do to survive. And AI can absolutely help us to do that. There's a lot of fear of AI. There's fear from actors that their performances will be substituted by AI technology. There's fear from writers that scripts will be written by robots. And what I say is, you can't avoid the future, but you've got to put technology to work for you. Of course, that's easy to say as a director, because AI gives a director the opportunity to create worlds which are beyond our resources, to shoot action scenes that don't involve such danger to the performers, to create imagery that we could never build. So from a director's point of view, AI is a good thing. From an actor's point of view, yes, they can be afraid, because unscrupulous operators maybe could steal their image and use it like counterfeit money, put them in films that they never really were paid for. That's possible. And that obviously needs not to happen. Government needs to legislate against that. And writers are safe for the moment, because if you've read, as I have, many scripts written by AI, by robots, they've got a long way to go. I mean, they're a giveaway, just as any school teacher can detect an essay from one of their students very quickly if the student uses AI technology, so you can when you're reading an AI-written script. But perhaps within the next decade, those robot scriptwriters will reach, a viable level. Now, that's a difficult question, because as a director, as a storyteller, I would be interested in seeing what a truly trained and armed robot could do for the art of storytelling. They haven't reached any level that's usable at the moment. But I'm not sure that I would be opposed to the idea of a robot working for me. I would get my script for a fraction of the cost. The robot would always do what I commanded, up to a point, of course. One day the robots are going to take over from us, but in my lifetime that's not going to happen. So the robot will be obedient to the director. Sometimes those writers, they don't want to take your instructions. They see the world as they've written it. And then for actors, let me say that at this moment throughout the world, some of the top actors, some of the ones that we see as superstars, are thinking 10, 20, 30, and a century into the future. They're already storing their imagery. They're having their face and their bodies and their voices scanned so that they can live again after death, that they can be reincarnated at many different ages in the future. Now, that's only a problem if the copyright of those AI-generated images that have been saved was stolen from the heirs of the actor, for example. Because in theory, you know, those images will be owned for centuries and inherited by the actor's children, grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren, and then they'll control them. But I'm not opposed to that idea. I mean, I'd love to see Tom Cruise, if I was alive in 100 years, acting, you know, as he does now, doing the stunts that he does now, and I'd love to see Nicole Kidman portraying those characters, you know, in 100 years. Not that I'll be here to see it, but the idea is very exciting. It just depends on who controls that imagery from an actor's point of view. But from a director, AI is a savior to us because it opens up the possibility of worlds that we could never build, of locations we could never go to, of images that would be beyond our resources to create.
So when we talk about AI and its positive sides, the benefit it has given to the industry, but at the same time people fear. They are fearful of the fact that they might not get new jobs. They might get replaced by technology. That is the fear that they are having right now.
You know, the fear of AI is a valid fear, but it's not one that we can avoid. And robots can make our lives easier or harder, depending, you know, on choices that we make. But we can't avoid the future. It's inevitable. It's going to lead up to a time where, you know, robots will be competing with us for jobs, will be competing with us for control. That's also inevitable. That our battles will not be between sects and countries, but between machines and humans. It's going to happen. We can't stop it. If governments legislated against AI, that would only mean that the pirates would gain ascendancy, because the technology is there. It's going to be used. Yes, we're going to lose jobs, but we're going to create new jobs. And those new jobs will be just as exciting as the ones we have now, but they'll just be different.
Let's talk about Bollywood as well. There are a few number of films which you've seen, which means The Bandit Queen and the film that was premiered at Cannes that we were talking about, All We Imagine as Light. What's your take about the production, the kind of transformation that India has witnessed, which is now being seen in the world at different film festivals?
Well, you know, the revolution that's taken place in film distribution has aided all countries outside America, because now we can see so many Indian films on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and so on. So before we were starved, we had to go to film festivals to see Indian films. And now we can turn on our TVs and we have a huge selection, and that's a good thing, a great thing. We've enjoyed in America, particularly lately, RRR, which was such a robust, wonderful film, a comedy, a drama, an historical epic, an anti-colonialism statement. I mean, it was just 4, 5, 6 different films rolled into one great big wonderful package. But not many Indians even have seen what I think was the Indian film of the last 12 months, which is Dev Patel's Monkey Man. It was, of course, Dev is not a citizen of India, even though he's an Indian man. And the film was not made in India. It was made on an island during COVID, an island just outside Singapore, where they took over and sort of inculcated themselves from the pandemic. But it's a beautiful film. Also, at this moment in America, so many filmmakers are commenting on the wonderful film All We Imagine as Light, which I predict could well be nominated for an Academy Award as Best Film. If not as Best Film, then as Best Cinematography. It wasn't selected as the official entry into the Oscars. It's a different kind of movie than the one that was selected. And it's a film that continues the Satyajit Ray tradition, you know, of small village life, of films that are made with heart rather than huge scope. And that's a film that so many of my friends keep writing to me about, keep commenting on, keep saying that this is a new direction. Well, it's not new, because if you go back to Satyajit Ray, you'll see the same concentration of small being bigger, of a film made from the heart. But the good news is that Indian cinema is no longer confined to the diaspora, the Indian diaspora around the world. You know, through the streaming services, it can be seen in every country of the world.
Yes, and when we talk about the streaming services, OTT, the over-the-top platform, the new concept, is gaining a lot of pace here in India as well. And we being part of the public service broadcast coming under Prasar Bharati, it has also launched its own OTT platform, which is called Waves. And Waves has given an opportunity to the new filmmakers to showcase their talent, because it's a platform which is which doesn't have any noise, but clean content for every kind of audiences, specifically when we talk about the Indian audiences. How do you see the arrival of OTT platforms? Can they really be a game changer?
Yes, they can, because just as much as this, the smartphone is a game changer. So that network, you know, is showing films that have been made by young filmmakers who are not spending a lot of money on their equipment, but are embracing this as the new film studio. Because here with your phone, today, we can write the script, film it, edit it, and monetize it by selling it to various networks, all from the phone, all for relatively little money. And that is the future. The future is going to be those kids of today who have grown up using their phone for social media, creating TikTok stories, using the camera in ways that we would never think of using, editing in new ways. This is the future. And I tell you what, those kids who are using their smartphone now are creating incredible movies. I mean, I love to go to a film festival called FS3, Smartphone Film Festival 3, that's put on in Australia. This year, there were 340 entries of short films from all over the world, from Africa, from the subcontinent, from right across Asia, and 45 feature films, all made on smartphones. That's the future. And you know, at the moment, still there's prejudice against this technology as if it's somehow inferior. It's not. With this, I can make a film that will screen in an IMAX theater and it will look great.
Right. So talking about the prestigious award that you are being bestowed with, and talking about so much in depth about Satyajit Ray, how do you feel on receiving this award from India in India?
Well, you know, it's embarrassing in a way, because compared to what he did, I think that I'm a pretender. This was a man whose films I greatly admired, who inspired me, who inspired my generation of film directors in Australia, who showed us a way of telling stories, an approach to characters, you know, and I've learned so much and used so many of his techniques, you know. He taught us that ordinary humans can act by being themselves in the same way as trained thespians can pretend to be a human. So he took real people and got them and put them into his stories. And so they brought, all of the vagaries, the beauty of real people that can't be acted. I mean, I can still remember first seeing Petha Panchali and looking at the old woman, the wizened face, that was like such a breakthrough for me in terms of thinking, well, there's no actor that could ever look like that. There's no one who could emote like that. So, receiving this award named after that great filmmaker, it's humbling.
And so when we talk about, your work being screened in India, because one of your movies was also screened in India in the last year, how do you see the reception of Indian audiences?
Oh, wow. The first time I came to India was in 1978. I came from the Cannes Film Festival where I'd shown my first feature film, and we touched down in what was then Bombay, and I couldn't wait to get to a Bombay cinema. And when I did, I had an experience that took me right back to my childhood watching the circus performers, because the audience were up on their feet and so involved with what was on the screen. All three stories of audience were so excited. I'd never seen a response like I saw in India. That was a whole new experience, and since then, a few times I've had the pleasure of screening one of my films for an Indian audience, and it really is like an adventure into another sphere, another planet almost, because I'm seeing reactions that I never imagined an audience would have. That's, I think, something that Australia, which is featured in this festival, and India have in common, and that is, an infatuation with the cinema.
And when we talk about Australia being the country of focus this time at the 55th edition of International Film Festival of India, we've also been witnessing the growing bilateral relationship between both the country, be it cricket, culture or cinema. How do you think this growing relationship can benefit the industry?
We're always, in filmmaking, we're always looking for co-production partners. That is another culture, another country that maybe could foot part of the price of making a movie. And that means we've got to search in the relationship between India and Australia for themes, for stories that might appeal to both countries, but also break out of both countries and sell to the world. I think that it's possible that the Indian side will benefit more greatly because there's so much migration. So many Indians have gone to live in Australia, and I can immediately think of a story to present to finance of an Indian family migrating to Australia and all the difficulties they might have in adapting to a completely different way of life and perhaps finding harmony through cricket.
Now, talking about the Indian culture a bit also, what has been your favorite moment so far?
Of this festival?
Yes.
Oh, I would say, just meeting Indian filmmakers, listening to their ideas, their hopes, their dreams, finding out more about Indian culture, rather than any particular films. We have a shared colonial experience, so we have this love-hate relationship with our British colonists who ruled us for so long. But we also, there's a funny thing about Australians and Indians, and that is that Australians and Indians both have an exuberant sense of humour. We love to laugh, we love to love, but I mean in a larger than life way. And I think that binds us together. But finding the stories that will appeal to both audiences is going to be, the task for us all.
A last quick question, sir. How do you see the future of Indian cinema, and especially when we are sharing a common platform with Australia this time, we are also focusing on the future so that we can honor this relationship further. How do you see both of them coming together?
The relationship between Indian cinema and Australian cinema is one to be worked out by writers, producers and directors as we look for commonality of stories and stories that we can join together to present to the world. We can start with cricket, but what we'll find if we make films only about cricket is that the Europeans and the Americans are just bewildered. What is cricket? Why do we want to watch it? Of course, you know, most sporting events take place in under 2 hours, and a cricket match takes as much as 5 days. Most people complain about what they call as boredom. So we're not going to find unity in just making films about cricket. We've got to find, you know, stories of adventure, of cultural clashes, of migration to both countries. I don't know all the answers, but I'm sure that with two prime ministers who have such a keen relationship with each other, leading the way, you know, our producers and our writers and our directors will find ways of bridging the gaps.
That's true. All right. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us for this exclusive conversation, and many congratulations to you once again for the prestigious award.
Thank you.
So there you heard Mr. Phillip Noyce, who talked about his experiences, what are his thoughts on Indian cinema, how are we taking forward this bilateral relationship in terms of cinema in the light of movies and more. With camera person Ajit and Alok, this is Deepika reporting for DD India in this exclusive broadcast. Namaskar.